Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today I'm playing the Siege of Jalalabad, which essentially represents the first major battle after the Soviets left in 14th February 1989. It was orchestrated essentially by the Pakistan military. Not ran, but they had advisors advising the Mujahideen on how to take this. It took them a while. It was noted that 3 weeks after the Soviets left before they started to attack. It was the first of the major cities that they did assault, and pretty much pulled everything that they had in the country against this one city. And it was a failure, which surprised them. The Soviets left on the 14th of February, and then the Mujahideen attacked on the 6th of March. They began their attack, and by mid-May, it was over. It's interesting. Basically the Pakistan military was fairly certain that they would be able to take Jalalabad quickly, and everyone was surprised when the Afghanistan forces put up the defence that they did, and they didn't fall. So it's an interesting battle, and the thing that sort of strikes me is the map just looks so silly, in the sense that it doesn't look like Battle of the Bulge. It doesn't look like a major engagement. Maybe it's something to do with the scale of it. I wanted to sort of, I could have maybe doubled the scale, so this was twice as big to make this city fighting. But I've just chosen this because I think the features are actually quite important. This river, I can't remember what it's called. It's pretty wide here, so much so that it's more of a lake. This is almost just as wide. Gets more rivery up here, but anyway, it was the first of the major battle. So Jalalabad is sort of on par with Kabul and Khost. They surrounded all of these places after the Soviets left, with the intention of overrunning them, and basically setting up the Mujahideen state again. So I'll just sort of click into play mode. Just one thing I have been actually going through. I'm not sort of. So I'm trying to say I'm doing groundbreaking research, but just a bit of supportive research, mainly because there is no Wikipedia site for this battle, and they did get this battle out of Afghan Wars 1839-1992, Edgar O. Balance, and the picture of that is on my other thing here. Picture of some dude with his rifle, but it is subtitled "What Britain Gave Up and the Soviet Union Lost," and it looks like it's a Brassey's publication. And anyone followed what I do, I've been quite inspired by the Brassey Encyclopedia of Warfare. Of course, the Brassey Encyclopedia of Warfare goes from sort of 2000 BC and covers every battle, whereas I'm just doing the modern ones. I've got a copy of the Brassey's Encyclopedia, whatever it's called, and got a little sort of day glow stickery thing that you put in books to bookmark them on every modern battle. It looks like a hedgehog, but I thought it was an interesting title, and in there basically it details this, because it's not detailed under the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. It's sort of like it's a thing of its own, really. And anyway, I'm just sort of digressing a little, but basically I've looked at that book. But what I've also done is go through some of these Times digital archives, and you can see this was, in theory, this was today. I can't believe it was today, because it wasn't. It would have been last night, but I was sure it's been up here for a few days. But even just reading the headlines: Kabul denies claims of rebel gains in battle for Jalalabad. Jalalabad pounded by 3,000 rebel rockets. That's not a small number of rockets. Rebels subject Jalalabad to fearsome barrage. Standoff at Jalalabad as Mujahideen reinforce. You can see the dates. 13th of March. So we know that they started on the about the 6th of March. So 13th of March. 9th of March. Karachi. Kabul is denying that Mujahideen are making ground. So it's the 9th of March. You can actually read into the dates here. 13th of March, 3,000 rebel rockets. I mean, that must have caused some damage. It was worth noting that they sort of said that not a huge number of civilians were killed because most of the houses had basements and people would go and hide in their basements, but really not so sure about that. But rebels subjected Jalalabad to fearsome barrage, so we'll get onto that in a bit. Standoff at Jalalabad, now on the 17th of March as Mujahideen reinforce. There are some notes on the reinforcements elsewhere. Mujahideen give ground at Jalalabad, so on 22nd of March, so this is sort of like 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks after they start their attack, they're giving ground, because you can almost get the timeline. Jalalabad supplies cut. So I don't know what really that means, but 10,000 Jalalabad dead. Now that's actually quite a lot when you're considering that the Mujahideen have 10,000 soldiers. So there's got to be a lot of civilians in there when the Afghans only had 4,500. So yeah, and then it's not in the headline. Attack launched by Afghan army. So on the what was it? The 10th of May, which is, as I said, it's pretty much mid-May when it ends. The Afghan army is obviously counterattacking, and it's just information you're getting from the headlines. Standoff at Jalalabad. These are just sort of Kabul denies. So here's the headlines. The eastern Afghan city of Jalalabad came under heavy Mujahideen attack yesterday, and the Kabul government claimed that 3,000 rockets had fallen on the city in the past 24 hours. About 500 government troops are said to have defected to the Mujahideen, etc., etc. So you get all sorts of quite interesting information in here. Although I basically said that 12,000 shells and rockets had landed in and around Jalalabad as the rebels continued their attempt to capture the first big city. So you get a sense of it's their first big city that they're trying to take, and obviously they failed. So significant there, really. It also talks about things like Peshawar. The Jezbi-e-Islami Mujahideen faction said yesterday it would not sell back Stinger missiles. No, that's something else. Pakistan admits arming and harbouring the rebels, i.e. the Mujahideen, but denies that its regulars or militia are fighting alongside them. There are other parts in here that have interested me, mainly because here many Arab volunteers are also joining the rebel ranks. Most of these belong to so-called Salafis, a force belonging to the Wahhabi sect under Maulana Jamilur Rehman and based in the Kunar area. Others belong to the Egyptian-based Islamic Brotherhood based in Egypt, and they are distributed among the different radical Mujahideen parties. But the rebels are still suffering from a lack of any unified command, etc., etc. I think these old newspaper things are actually, they're pretty sort of informative and useful when it comes down to. Okay, it seemed to stop recording there, so there's probably lots of really interesting bits of information. I've moved these troops down here. What I was sort of saying was really that the game is really sort of designed to support some critical thinking. When considering the news reports, for example, that I've just been showing. Hopefully you saw some of those. And it takes the map from being fairly simple to something that actually has all the salient features that are referred to. For example, there was a lot of fighting around the airport. That changed hands a few times, and here it is relatively undefended and sort of without fortifications. But the fact is, it's a feature, and so. I think one not so much battling here, but one of the things I'm sort of perhaps in the back of my mind thinking is that if you were to look at this map, say, as a game, and whilst looking at all the other ones, you'd think, oh, this one looks boring. There's nothing boring about it. Once you understand the history, once you realise that you're sort of interacting with history to a certain extent, it becomes sort of, it doesn't matter whether or not it's a challenge. I mean, what's the challenge? Oh, take the troops along the road. I mean, maybe I could have gone cross country. I mean, how else am I going to get from there to there? There's not the major strategic decisions that you might get in sort of, Gettysburg or, Waterloo, where there's a lot to play. There's not much to it. And I think I said earlier on in the video, it's the second time I did it, nagged the other one up. I could have made Jalalabad bigger, so that there was more involved fighting, but I don't think you wouldn't get the geography. I think the geography is quite key. These rivers and this big sort of open area of water, which is more lake-like. A lot of this is sort of lake-like. There's a very significant features, and I wanted to get those in so you could sort of position Jalalabad as a place just south of this major river. I don't know whether there's any fords. I haven't looked at it closely, and it's a major river, but it looks like on a wide floodplain. So there's like lots of channels, probably many of which could be crossed with relative ease, as opposed to the Grand Canyon, which you would have a bit of a problem crossing. And obviously moving. It's interesting that they're all in one stack. Moving a lot of units like this is, I don't want to say tedious or boring, but it's a task that sort of, I think in a lot of games you would just sort of pick the unit up and you just move him there and he'd just go. It's a very sort of manual process, but I happen to feel that in this instance it's not good. It sort of typifies the way in that it's not ideal, but once you get to the next level, when you're sort of connecting, I think it's the best way to do it. You move it one and then look, how does that change things? Well, here it's pretty obvious it doesn't change anything. I don't need to reflect after one move, whereas in these other games where you just pick the unit up and just move them all the way, they basically they take a lot of the fun out of the sort of building up of things. So anyway, I'm not sure that I want to commit my air power anyway yet. Although I think I will. The reason I was hesitant, because if I get a result, for example there, so they're now down to one depression, they will recover next turn if they don't move. So what I've done effectively there with that one airstrike, well, I've used up one sortie, and sorties might become valuable. So they will actually have to stay there stationary. Now all it's done is delay them. I don't want to do it on this because they're too heavily defended, there's too many of them. But was it worth delaying them by one turn and using up an entire point, whereas I could use the air power a little more strategically when they are closer, more broken up, etc. But I've opted for that, and the reason I made that decision was because I can actually follow it up with some artillery, which I'm going to fire both of them in. Yeah. Now that's good. So with the oh no, that wasn't good. That was rubbish. Oh well. Because if I'd got a good result, I could have compounded that with that. So that was not so great. Now, the only other thing to say is I do have a few more troops. Now I think, because they can only come across the river, keeping two there. I'm going to keep two there because it is significant. I'm going to move one more unit there. Decisions. It's nearly 15 minutes. So I think I'm going to go to the Mujahideen turn. I'll start it. I've got 15 seconds. I will leave them to recover, and they're going to finish this video and start in a bit. Okay, so it's pretty sure the Afghans have just had their turn, so it's now the Mujahideen turn. Yeah. I thought I'd done that already. Anyway, so moving them further in. I'm going to leave them there. And so it begins. The splitting up of these forces. 1, 2, 3. Now I haven't defended the airport, and I don't have any sort of system into to have Afghan troops that then go onto the Mujahideen side. Rockets, infantry. Nice to be able to move an entire stack. I did sort of mention earlier, or I didn't sort of mention anything, sort of just refer to these huge stacks. I don't have stacking limitations, and to some extent you could just pile everything up into one stack. There are immediate drawbacks in the sense that although they become super powerful, it's not actually that difficult to get, say, a one-to-one result in your favour, and everything in the stack becomes affected. The rules are not ideal. I have thought about having stack limitations, but it would not make a lot of sense to do it by strength points, and so the only real way you could do it would be by battalion size, and even then it's not ideal. But I don't have, this is not flagged up as a battalion. It's not done, and I've got so many scenarios that I don't think it'd be worth going back and doing them all. Though to be quite honest, at some point I might have to bite the bullet and do something like that, or put it onto strength points and just have done with it. Which might make sense, but some points are just strong because they've got a lot of good weapons as opposed to being a certain size. But, I sort of thought, I could do stack limits, but the thing about stack limits that I don't like is that it's all about usability. You don't know whether something it's got its stack limit. If you can't move it, it becomes a bit frustrating. If you're trying to move into there and you don't know that you've reached a stack limit, you can be a bit frustrated. But also you might think your movement's up, so instead of you just might leave him there when he could actually move quite a way down the road or something. It's sort of a part of the gameplay as well, because here, I think if you're playing sensibly, you're not just going to stack everything up and go around with these super stacks, because you could stack everything up there. It's invincible, can't be attacked, and it will beat everything it touches. But if you're playing like that, then you're not really playing. And I sort of think, well, that's that. Now, let's start some of these legendary rocket strikes. So he's probably worth quite a lot in there actually. So let's just fire everything and see what happens. don't want to do the odds. I mean, this is what they got. 1 to 3 odds. That's not good. And you've got an exchange. So this sort of represents, to some extent, I mean, obviously they've got 2 to 1 manpower odds. 10,000 versus 4,500. But that's not really. Traditionally the limit is 3 to 1. I've been reading in some NATO doctrine, and this is really relating to US military doctrine relating to NATO operations in Europe. And it's basically saying that traditionally 3 to 1 odds would be what you'd expect to go up against a defended position, any sort. But it's saying basically in sort of modern warfare, with the intensity of firepower, I constantly refer to sort of the Soviet strategy of saturation bombardment with artillery. They would just completely saturate an area with artillery. And basically what they were looking at, they were saying, we want to get minimum odds. When they're doing an assault, you want minimum odds of 15 to 1. That's what they're looking for. That's because you just put everything into one concentrated area and totally obliterate that area. So I mean, if you were trying to attack this, you could just put everything into there and get that 17 to 1 odds. So this whole concept of a big stack is not, completely unwarranted. But the thing is, you wouldn't get that by having volume of manpower. You get that by sort of, concentrated artillery all on that place, aerial bombardment, combined arms. You might have quite a lot of infantry, but that wouldn't be the thing that would make up the odds, so to speak, in effective firepower and force. So obviously their artillery, it's sort of interesting really, because obviously they're firing a lot, but it's not having much of an effect. But they are depressed, so maybe they can keep focusing on that unit. They might be able to get a good surround on there. Next turn it will be a little easier to damage. They're going to sit there and hopefully recover. Okay, so now it's the Afghan turn, and it's sort of a little difficult to decide what to do with the air power, because I'd rather keep it, to be quite honest. You see, I mean, if he just sits there, he will recover. So that was basically, effectively, all that's done is delay him from moving. One, two. He instead of moving, he would have been there. So really, that would have been in zone of control. It's not really done much. So I'm actually not going to use my air power because I want to save it. And hopefully now, when after the Mujahideen get tired, I can then concentrate the air power, maybe, if I can save it for 10 turns. And so they're not going to really do any moving around. I think it's still safe to keep that unit there. We've still got two units in there. Keeping the artillery there is probably making it safe. So it's the end of their turn. And now we have the Mujahideen turn, where they can actually recover these units. No, they're not going to be able to go across that river. I'm not sure what the river factors are, but there's 2 stacks in there in fortifications. There's not going to get any odds. But we can certainly start to stack up here. And it's sort of interesting really, because if I kept all this in one stack, I could have had 2 super stacks against this one here, which is what I was just saying you shouldn't really do. trying to pretend to play it properly. So that's the situation, and this is where I think, well, I'm not going to pause, but you would sort of pause and say, well, this is, you know, the strategy I've taken without really a lot of thought. But I think, you know, once you, one of the benefits of being able to sort of do this again and again is sort of think, well, is that the situation I would like to be in at this point? You know, if I was to maybe do it again, now that I know, you know, the implications of that, I can sort of say, well, I'm not actually going to separate this force, keep them together, and get combined arms all against this. But then again, I might sort of say, well, would I actually really want to do that? Because it's not necessarily silly, but I think they would have surrounded this place. So what I'm saying is you sort of pause and sort of think, well, what is actually happening here in relation to what actually did happen? This unit is sort of depressed, and sort of the question is, do I want to continue to? He's not depressed now because, yeah, we're just going to attack this. I mean, it's interesting really because look at how many units I've got, and I'm not even going to try to do the maths, just simply because I wonder if I'm just going to put everything in because my brain's not up to it. I'm trying to multitask here with actually doing some work. Every time this loads up, I'll do another blast on this. So, I mean, he's going to be 15. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 to 1. 3 to 1. 4 to 1. So possibly 4 or 5 to 1, maybe. 2 to 1. 2 to 1. How did I get my maths so wrong? I wonder how that happened. What didn't I think of? To a 5. I know. Wow, that is. You know, I just don't put enough thought into things really. I'm just trying to sort of just play it. He's in built up, so that doubles him. So he's worth 15, and then it's doubled. So this is really, you know, it is quite hard, and I'm glad that was that was the result because it got an 8. And again, everything like this is sort of, I do like to pause and just sort of think, well, what has actually happened here? You know, obviously this is their first major attack on, you know, one of the major cities of Afghans after Soviet forces have left, etc., etc. They really need it to work, and everyone is surprised when it doesn't. And this one unit has put up a remarkable defence, but he's gone up to Depression 1, and all of these units will also be now at Depression 1. All of them. That's one of the problems with large stacks and committing them in that way. So it's gone according to history. They've made this major assault, and I don't want to maybe sort of go too much off a tangent, but in here it's sort of, I'm not sure whether I can find it, but basically it starts talking about how the Mujahideen sort of, they didn't even, once their attack sort of, it says a standoff at Jalalabad. I think it's going to be one of these ones. No, I can't find it immediately, but basically it starts saying how the Mujahideen have almost given up. 8,000 rebels and 2,000 government troops died in 7 weeks of fighting. Okay, the screen probably just jumped there. I've gone on to my third video now. I've actually just decided I'm not going to show the newspaper items, just in case of copyright or something like that, and or any books or anything like that. Again, I just don't want to really sort of run foul of things like that. I'm sure I can get away with a little glimpse I just had of public interest, but it's general I won't. But I read it from the other screen. It does actually almost infer that the Afghan 11th Division were in there, because the Mujahideen were claiming that they defeated the 11th Division. It also mentions a few other things, including San Markel, which is sort of towards the airport, and it describes how the forces loyal to the government fought their way along the road to Jalalabad, and noting that the road was littered with tanks, armoured personnel carriers and bodies. It also notes that at least 3 tanks were captured intact by the Mujahideen, and were now firing on the government positions. So incredibly involved. And again, we're back to this sort of square, and it's just sort of like focusing on the sort of you know, the sort of the implications of what happens. And essentially, again, they did do this major assault and it failed. At 2-to-1 odds, that's actually pretty good. I mean, although I miscalculated, you know, that's pretty much how it should be, I imagine. Stoic defence, at 2-to-1 odds could have gone either way. You know, it's just a die roll. It's no heroics. There's no sort of extended, you know, like squad leader tactics. It's just, you know, all that is suddenly decided with one press of a button. That's why it's good to reflect on the significance of that one press of a button and see what happened. But you know, I think the 2-to-1 represents actually what they actually had, almost to some extent as well. So they actually did have 10,000 troops versus 4,500, which is about 2-to-1. Just a little point to maybe consider myself. Firstly, I think I will be putting in more artillery and rockets for the Mujahideen when I go back and edit this, based on that experience. I don't think they have enough really to sort of reflect that, you know, the reports of, you know, this massive barrage of, you know, a couple of little items doesn't seem to be sort of, you know, doing much. I think they should be doing a little more with that, at least double that, you know, to add another 2 rockets and another 2 artillery, and that shouldn't be duplicated like that. Need to get the fine details sorted out, but that was actually pretty tight. I mean, that was 63 versus 30. That was only just 2-to-1. So the 2-to-1 sort of reflects, you know, the reality of the situation, and the die roll wasn't, you know, too unreasonable. And so, you know, back to the game. And now it would have been sort of like the Mujahideen High Council that would have been considering these results. But they do have the airport, you see, and, you know, the reports state that the Afghans retook the airport, but I don't see that happening very soon, anytime soon. And just to reiterate, I'll probably reclassify these as all 11th Division, because we've got that bit of information from the newspaper. But yeah, that's that, and they're all sort of down 1. So I think that's the end of their turn. What have we got over here? Yeah, he's gone into that zone control. And so, although it's pretty tight, I think this is the stack to maybe attack. So I've got some artillery. I mean, just thinking about it, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16, I could get a 1-to-1 attack on that. I'm not going to. All I want to do is fire my artillery. Well, no result, but that could have been a result. And so I'm going for this stack, because if I can just get another depression on it, if I could get another 2, that would be really nice. I don't think we're going to get much from this one sortie. 1 to 3 odds. I think maybe I will double the aircraft and also double the artillery and rockets. Mujahideen. And I think I might put in a tank company to reflect that, you know, how they took some tanks. And that will give them maybe a little bit more of a, you know, not so much an edge, but something just another tool to consider strategy with, because the tanks will actually get a bonus against infantry. But you would imagine that maybe these have some mechanized units or armored units in there somewhere as well. So that's all the Afghan forces want to do. The bit that I was looking for, I still haven't found. But it was basically saying, well, it says here, refugees are fleeing government bombarded positions. Mujahideen rockets are frequently fall short. Government planes are flying between 20 to 30 sorties a day, and a few at night, pounding Mujahideen positions and captured villages. Bombs of up to 500 pounds are being dropped, as well as cluster bombs. There's no evidence so far of the use of chemical weapons or napalm. It does note that I think somewhere in there it said that the British sold napalm, sold the Afghans napalm, which is interesting. Basically, the bit I was referring to was stating that the impetus of the war had sort of fallen back, and you know, while they were sort of pushing day in, day out, there would be a day here, a day there that they wouldn't even bother to attack. You know, this is obviously towards the end of it, which I found interesting as well. So it's now Mujahideen. Now, what I'm going to do to sort of reflect, not so much that that bit that I sort of spent a bit of time trying to find and couldn't, you know, but I do remember reading it, so it's going to be there somewhere. Basically, this is going to be one of those days they're not going to attack, at least from these two fronts, because I want to recover these units. Now these units can still do something. Now this guy here, he's got no depressions there, so we cause a depression there and a depression there, but they're both recovered. We obviously recovered this unit, so we can possibly start moving him up now. And they are in zone to control, even though they're across the river. Okay. Now the attacks did come from the south and the east. This is to some extent realistic. It's forcing them to keep something up here in the north at least. But in theory, as it stands at the moment, they could redeploy this unit there. Could do that. Ouch! I shouldn't have moved those. I said I wasn't going to move them. Damn. Well, let's see what we can do artillery-wise over here. Artillery rockets. 1 to 4, nothing. Artillery and rockets. It's going to be nothing again, isn't it? Okay. So they've now captured the airport. And they could counterattack against there, but there's 2 units, which makes it 6. They could get 10, which would be a 1-to-1 odds with some artillery, which would take it up to 12, which would take it up to 2-to-1. So they could do a counterattack there. I am also going to move this unit here. I think I'm going to move this unit to there, because I don't think they can attack across the river. To there. And do I do a counter-attack? Let's see what the air power can do. 1-to-1, no result. Four to one, defender retreats. And that was sort of, to some extent, historically relevant. Because I do think they did some counter-attacking. I mean, it's not going very well for Mujahideen. Possibly wonder how they can possibly achieve anything, really. Well, I did get desperate, so I'm going to play desperately. I think this is probably going to end up being a 1-to-1 attack. And I can't be bothered to do the maths, so I'm just going to plonk everyone in there. Well, I'm actually going to do a little bit of thinking here. He's at depression 3, so I don't want to use him. Depression 0, so I'll move him to there. I'll retake this unit, this position back, because I want the surround. And I'll leave that as it is. So maybe get that up to the 2-to-1. So they're going to do another attack because they want to take Jalalabad to use it as a seat of government for their interim government. You know, it's important for them, and they were pretty desperate. And if you look at, I don't know if I read it out, but the casualties were 8,000 Mujahideen versus 2,000 Afghans, so that's almost 50% on both sides. That's an incredible level of loss. Another 8. I mean, that's two rounds where they have not been able to take that. I mean, if you think of the odds, they could possibly, you know, they could have won that, getting a defender retreats, and once they get into these fortified positions, it would be really difficult for the Afghans to sort of, you know, come back. I don't think I'm going to have any chance getting across there. I wonder what the odds actually would be. 5, 6, 7, doubled to 14, tripled 30, 42 with 6. Yeah, I mean that's just going to be 1-to-4, which is the worst odds. I'm not going to do that. Even if I put that in, it'd still be 1-to-4. That is, you know, all I can do there is put pressure on them. So what we have here is the siege of Jalalabad, which is pretty much going exactly as it did. We've learned a few things and make a few adjustments to give it a little more dimension. The divisions, they increased artillery and rocket power, AF power, etc. I'll speak to you in a bit. Okay, so just to recap, it's only it's turn 4, so it's not. No, it's only turn 2 or something, but the Mujahideen are having a difficult time making any ground into Jalalabad. Now, I think if we were to play it again, this assault could have gone well, and they could have had maybe 2 hexes. It's really just a die roll, and even in the real thing, I think the degree of variance could have gone either way. But in the real world, you don't have the opportunity to do it again. I mean, for example, any particular one period of artillery barrage could have been particularly ineffective, whereas if you did it again under exactly the same circumstances, it could have been effective in the sense that they don't have immediate control where these rockets land, and if they had an unexpected devastation as opposed to an unexpected failure, a particular commander being hit, a command vehicle being hit, just something or whatever, a combination of these sorts of things. I'm not entirely sure that it would be unreasonable to imagine that if you were to put a replay switch on reality, it could go differently any number of times. It's interesting, really. I watched a video online. I don't particularly like them, but it was sort of interesting. It was sort of purported to reflect an historical event, although, to be quite honest, it didn't purport a historical event because the historical event didn't happen. Essentially, some Japanese troops essentially landed on an island, and the island was defended by Australians, I think. But historically, the Australians had actually left, and so there wasn't anyone there. But they played a sort of what if. The thing is, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, this is really good, because they're taking a historical situation and they're playing it with one of these fancy 3-dimensional things where you've got the super duper graphics. I watched it for about 15 minutes, I think, and it was probably about 15-20 minutes long. And at the end, I just thought, I gave up really in sort of being interested in it, because the only thing that has changed really is the graphics. It's still the sort of, I can remember playing Settlers and Command and Conquer, and not so much Civ, because Settlers and Command and Conquer in particular, things are sort of automated, things do things. And in that game, you just land with your Beechcraft, and it's as though you're not even playing the game. This is not going to play itself. I have to think about everything. But these troops, and they sort of run up the beach. And the thing is, if there was any other sort of variant of degree, they might go somewhere else and might try this, and they were just sort of standing up in the middle of fields of fire, firing their rifles. And at the end of the day, you realise that you can see straight through the AI, and it didn't make any sense at all. As to sort of, there was no pausing in the battle. I think pausing to reflect and review the situation is fairly key, and these sorts of artificial intelligence things don't do it. There's just this constant barrage of fire, guns that never go out of ammunition, at least I imagine so. Anyway, that's beside the point. What I'm saying is, it was interesting in the sense that you just almost, the guy who was playing it, I think he made some adjustments, but basically you just sit there, press the go button, and just see what happens. And that's a sort of almost true modelling. As I said, I thought it was really good idea, but after 15 minutes I didn't think so. But if you were to get reality and play that same sort of replay again and again, I'm just sort of wondering whether or not they could have gone both ways. Obviously, that's the nature of reality. It didn't, and they failed, and they're failing in this attempt here. And it is just down to a 1-to-1. I don't even know whose turn it is. Mujahideen. They've moved. Artillery's got no more movement, so it's going to be the end of the turn. So it'll be the Afghanistan turn. Now, do they want to go again for this? Depression 1. He's not depressed. He's not depressed. And he's depressed 1. Press 0, press 0. It's a bit tight, but I wouldn't mind really trying to push the fatigues up on this unit here. Depression 1, depression 1. It's got anti-aircraft. Let's see whether that actually has any effect. 1-to-1, no result. Well, you know, that could have been a result. I think I will go for it again. It keeps my unit here slightly weaker, so much so that I think I'm not going to use him because he's got depression 1. I can recover him and still do a 2-to-1 attack here with 10, 16 versus 6. So that should be a 2-to-1. I mean, that would knock it up to 3-to-1, but I want him to recover. I don't care if I lose here. Ouch! I ouched because I forgot to put my artillery in. But I've still got 2-to-1 odds. They're giving me 3-to-1. Oh well, at least I knocked him up. I also got fatigued myself. So he's under depression 2. I could get another 11, although he wouldn't be at 5. 6, that would be 11. I could use this unit in an assault there, but I won't. I wonder if in reality people forget to fire their artillery. Probably not. But stranger things have happened. But I think I can fire my artillery on its own. Probably twice. Yeah, I really should sort this artillery out so they can't fire so much. But so it's another exchange. And that is the artillery fired up. So it's on depression 3 now. So we'll probably get a 1-to-1 there. But now he's permanently depressed by 1, which is a good start. Okay, so now I'm going to play as the desperate Mujahideen, so they're going to go for this one again. Look at all that. And again, it's not. I watched a lot of these games, and there is some strategy involved in how you do things, and there isn't really much scope for strategy here. It's just sort of plonk your troops around, and I think it's always going to be go for 1 hex. You know, it's not as though you can split your forces up, do this, do that, cut the road off. They got it. The Mujahideen are making in-grounds now. Now that, I'm getting tired myself, but that is significant because now it's going to be very hard for the Afghanistan forces to take this place back. In fact, it's going to be impossible. However, it's sort of getting interesting because it just concentrates these units into this hex. Well, we've got to move in there with, as I like to say, everything. Right, enough to sort of deter the Afghans from trying to take it back. So that is, I think the Mujahideen made in-grounds into the east of Jalalabad, but they were quickly repulsed. And in this case, I can't see that being quickly repulsed. You know that because now they've got the benefits of that defence. So let's reload that. So in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 sevens, 14, 21, doubled 42, tripled 823. They're not. That's interesting, really. And again, I think, maybe in the real world, if they'd managed to get that, the sort of volume of mujahideen that they did have into that part of the city, it could be equally as difficult for the Afghans to have repulsed them. It's just they didn't get there in reality. And the Mujahideen did try. They lost 8,000 troops out of 10,000. The numbers don't make sense to me. There were 8,000 people. No, I don't know. I can't remember. I'm not going to look that up in the news item again. But it seemed to be a hell of a lot of people that they lost. But as in a lot of these city things, and I keep my eye out onto sort of, how does it work, and how does it reflect what is actually happening, where you get two people in two parts of a city and neither can really afford to attack the other. And that's a sort of situation that is not unbelievable, because it's what we got in Aleppo for a number of years. Be interesting to see how it's quickly they can take out Mosul. I think it will fall quite quickly, but it'll be a little expensive. I don't think anyone imagines that the ISIS people will stay there. We'll be able to hold it indefinitely. But again, what we end up with is a situation where you've got to start considering supplies in the long-term sort of considerations. I mean, there's no modelling the fact that the Mujahideen appeared to suffer from lethargy, not attacking on some days and then sort of wandering off. What sort of military force wanders off? Well, because they have lack of unity. You've got to sort of, well, how do you reflect that? Well, you can have leaderships, and a lot of games have things like activation roles. You've got to activate units, and you can apply that there. But I don't want to add all that because it just makes it complicated. And again, if you don't know any of that, it'd be pretty impossible to figure it out, and almost equally impossible to fathom out why. Because if you don't understand what people are trying to achieve activation roles, it's sort of why can't you move sometimes and not others? I don't know. But anyway, that was success for the Mujahideen. I think it's changed things slightly, and again, it's such a small game, but you can read so much into it. And again, it's sort of like, it's almost worth pausing to consider, the significance of that. They have actually taken this little part of Jalalabad. They've captured the airport. Historically, the Afghans retook the airport. So, although the Mujahideen had essentially what we could describe as a really poor start, they were failing, and it looked as though they were never going to make any ground. There were crap shots, 2 to 1. They're bound to have taken it eventually. The fact that it took them 3 or 4 turns is actually just a bit of bad luck on their part, but it was going to happen, on a 2 to 1 roll eventually. And I don't really think that the Afghans can take it back. All they can hope for is that the Mujahideen continue to attack and fail. Now, what is their? This guy has a full depression. What are their depression levels like? 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 1. Now the ones will all be recovered, but the 4s will only go down to 2s. So, and those are the ones that took place over here, I think. Well, he's at depression 3, so it's not as though they're completely unscathed. And I think one of the things that's quite difficult, and maybe a little abstract to understand in this game, is the depression levels, because you can't see it visibly. If it was a clever game, I'd have a little bar across the top where it had red, but it's not that level. But even so, the level that I intend people to play it, they will be paying attention to fatigue levels. Depression 1 is because they got the exchange and failed on their attacks. So, and it's also worth considering, in the role play state, what they are not. That they have been, have suffered losses, and so what would that mean? But anyway, I roll up to another 15 minutes, so I might do another one. So maybe see in a bit. Okay, so my mind is full of things that I want to change and modify on this. For example, I think I want to exchange one of these infantry battalions for a 3 armoured companies, so maybe an armoured company and 2 mechanised infantry companies, maybe 4, to give them a bit more of an edge. And also there's a few other things, just putting in a couple of other infantry companies, low value, but just so they can leave hexes with the minimum of defence, allowing them maybe to at least consider putting all the big units against a stack like that, or obviously giving them the designation of the 11th, identifying that other village. I'm not sure where it was, but it sounds like it was about somewhere around here, where that were initially assaulted by the Mujahideen and retreated back to the city. There's so many little things, giving some of these Mujahideen the extra designations that they had, but I think as we've got it here at the moment, I don't think the Afghans can really do much about that. It's still the Mujahideen turn. I'm not going to try this because there's 3 units in there. Just want to send in some rockets and artillery. Just end the turn there. So the Afghans haven't actually lost any troops, but that is a big one. Here I think we're going to try and counter-attack against this. I'm just sort of hoping. Depression 3, I mean that's significant. With some luck, a low die roll. No die rolls. 1-to-1, no result. Well, that was obviously not a low die roll. It doesn't show the results there, so I will do a counter attack there. Depression 1, with artillery. Now that was what I was after. I was hoping and praying for something. Now it was obviously about as good as a die roll gets. They had 3-to-1 odds, which was fairly. They could have got a bit more. And they've had a little bit more and a little bit less, so that could have been a 4-to-1. That was a very comfortable 3-to-1. But they've now, so they've not gone up any depressions and fatigues. So they've actually counter-attacked, and they've done that significantly because it's actually obviously without any question more beneficial to eliminate a unit than it is to force it into retreat, or especially suffer an exchange. So the tides of war turn, but that still doesn't mean they have any chance at all ever of really doing anything. And I mean, the only thing I can really conceive them doing that would give as a sort of a plan would be to not use any air power at all, to save up all 4 units and start using them all at the same time, and hopefully cause some depressions, and then eventually whittle those units down. I mean, even these units are now starting to dig in there. I mean, there's only 2 units in there. Now, because it's a desperate situation, let's see. 10, 25 versus 6, 8. 25, 31 versus 8. 16, 24. Slice around. 3-to-1. Maybe 4-to-1. It's probably worth it if we can get that low die roll. It's that low die roll that we want. 3-1, but that was an exchange on the worst. That wasn't that bad. But that would have actually, if we got a low die roll there, that would have been. I quite often sort of marvel at the prospect between the ebb and flow. You know, the Mujahideen have done suddenly well and it looks unassailable, and then all of a sudden we've eliminated that unit, and you know that would have changed things significantly, but that's not. It didn't happen. In fact, we've got the worst die roll we could have possibly had. So that's that. So it's the end of that turn. So now the Mujahideen are thinking, well, we don't want that happening again. But what do they want happening again? I mean, they probably want to leave these units sat there. I'm tempted to shove everything into that hex, but that just sort of strikes me as not playing properly. Let's reload. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 infantry battalions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 infantry battalions. So those are pretty much equal. Well, that is everything possible against that stack there. But I'm not going to do it because a lot of these units are high depressions, so I want to get them down. Thinking. Every time I move a unit 1 point into there, it goes up by 6. I'll just put that up by 12 factors now. Like I say, if I had little companies, I could leave that barely defended and, you know, use this big stack, you know, to fight one of these. Well, I'm not going to do too much thinking, so I'm just going to move that there. I'm going to try and get an air assault into here. I don't think we're going to get much out of this. The air power, as I'm going to double that up. An exchange, that was good. 1 to 4 an exchange. So that was perfect because it's now put all these. He's now under depression too. Everything is now depressed. I've got my outflank. And again, we're just really desperate for a low number and a defender eliminated of one sort. I'm guessing it could be a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 attack. You see, that's what it comes down to. It's all down to the die roll. That could have gone, you know, it sort of could have been. Now that puts the Afghans in a difficult situation because they don't have any choice. You know, they've got this guy in the open now. I don't think he's really that vulnerable, but we'll see. And I did that just for that just to get the odds up, and I think you'll find that was a mistake. Mujardin, what can they do? Well, straight off 3. Well, depression 2, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 21. So it's already going to be a 4-1. Get an outflank, beef it up a bit. I mean, the concept of, say, a 2-1 or a 1-1 attack, it's not that hard to comprehend when looking at urban fighting, I don't think. You know, you can't go around expecting to get 7-1 odds. 7-1, defender eliminated. That's what happens when you come out of your defences. Well, that was that. I think I'm going to leave all these units here to recover. I think there's some pretty unpleasant conversations going on amongst the Afghanistan High Command. A lot of people blaming a lot of other people for the loss of their first unit. Well, we can at least carry out an airstrike on this. Defender retreats. Depression 6. I mean, I would like to just come around there, but I can't. But I can at least maybe get some artillery on it. Do I do 2? 2 lots of 1? I think so. So that's taken them up to depression 7. And oh, we've retreated. Depression 9. Oh, we still got some. I don't understand what's happening there, but I accept that. Well, he's gonna have. It's gonna be a 7-1, isn't it? That's the button. Defender eliminated. See, you know, reaching out for those surround odds just puts the units. I went out there to get the surround. It was only an extra 10% and lost the unit. He moved out there to get the surround and he lost the unit. I mean, the odds don't really match up, but you know, every little counts. So, Mujardin. Well, let's go for it. I don't want to spend too much time thinking. A 1-2. That's telling. That's very telling. Because I don't think we can really do much from there. Got less than a minute left. I might do another video of it, just because I'm sort of in the mood. But if the Mujahideen can no longer assault, and the Afghanistans can't take that, then it becomes a stalemate. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that and maybe come back later. Okay, still a bit distracted, but I'm just wondering, let's go through the depressions. Maybe do it up here so that maybe people can sort of see what's happening. Depression 1, depression 1, depression 1, 3, 0, 0, 3, 1, 0, 1. 1, 1, 3, 0, 0, 3, 1, 0, 1, 1, 3, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4. So I think the Mujahideen want to spend a turn doing nothing. Okay. Air assault. Let's get a 1. Huh. That's anti-aircraft, knocking it down to 3/4 effect, and I'll still not fix that little image thing. Okay. Depression 4, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2. And I think, again, the Afghans are not going to do anything. Now, I think the Mujahideen are going to be sufficiently recovered. Depression's 1. I'm going to give them another turn rest, because I don't want to start going through too much off the top of my head, I think, yeah. Okay, do the rest. Now, obviously I have got 2 units now, but that won't last for long. But I can send them both against this unit. Yes, I'm actually not going to do that. I know what it is, because it's come on turn whatever it is, turn 10. It says it's turn 10, it's not greater than turn 10, so it's that same problem. I keep coming against these problems and never fixing them. Sooner or later I will. I'm going to really sit around and recover. Now the Mujahideen, I think, are going to have to act this turn. Depression's 2. Yes, I think the ones that were on 2s have recovered. There was nothing more than a 4. Now I think fighting going up against that stack is not going to happen. But what I can do, so what we've got in the stack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to extend the front around. Like so. Artillery and rockets. Nothing. Artillery and rockets. An exchange. Okay, die roll of 1, an exchange. Okay, so I'm going down to depression 1. An assault onto that. It's worth 5, doubled up to 10 in the urban, so he's worth 30. Units worth 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Now he's worth less than 10% less, that's 27, so it's 21 versus 27. I've got a surround, which puts me up to 22.1 versus 27. 23.1. 23.1 versus 27, so it's still less, not even a 1-to-1. I'll have to wait till I get my artillery back in there. However, the Iraqis could now attack this axe, possibly with 2 fighter aircraft. Please be more than 1-to-4. 1-to-1 odds and exchange. So let's knock that down, given that the 1 depression. Because it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 26, 31 versus 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. A 2-to-1. Make sure I click all the numbers. Not factoring in depressions, which I haven't calculated, so maybe a 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and exchange. So there's some heavy battling going on over sort of terrain that's difficult to control. I don't know what I meant when I said that. What I mean is it's sort of these areas, they're neither in nor out. Here, I think that's pretty solid. You know, there's nothing that can do, nothing the Afghans can do about that hex. But here it's sort of, you know, you can get that 1-to-1, that was a 2-to-1 somewhere. It's just waiting for that good die roll. Hopefully maybe a DE, defender eliminated. Hopefully not something like an attack of retreat. So they are crap shots, but you know, this constitutes heavy fighting. I mean, the thing to do is it's not like the front of a castle here. This is probably, although it's classified as desert, it's probably still slightly urban, farms, roads, tracks. You know, the distinction between this hex and this hex is not as dramatic as it appears. Just the land classification is such. So there's probably a lot of there's probably a lot of street to street fighting, house to house fighting between these, and that's what that sort of represents. And it's still doing it okay. But bit by bit, the Mujahideen are trying to stretch the Afghan line, because after losing that unit, they are actually down a unit, which will at least weaken this hex. But then once we stretch around there, we won't have the numbers against that hex. But you know, it sort of swings and roundabouts, really. So yeah. Oh, it's the Mujahideen turn. So I'm waiting for something to happen, really. Okay. Well, I'm not really going to do much thinking. I'm just going to do it. Those old 1-to-1 odds. Getting down to it now. 1-to-1 in exchange. Let's just do it over here as well. It's going to be a 1 to 2, isn't it? A 1 to 2 and an exchange. So you're getting down to sort of almost realistic levels, and I can almost sense the Mujahideen frustration here. If it wasn't for that, it would be going really badly. But they got that one positive key, in there, and they could probably move some troops out of there. Although they were going into there, both of those attacks could have gone for the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen have actually had a lot of attacks. You say, "Oh, it could have done this. It could have done this." Well, yeah, I mean, it was not, a 1 to 4 odds. I mean, a 1 to 1 could have been a defender and a retreat. And that's all they need. They just need to get in there, because the Afghans are far less likely to get that 1 to 1 for those sorts of odds. And I think that's a significant sort of perspective on the whole concept of the way battle works. I mean, it's going to be a 1 to 1. You're going to lose troops in the effort, but essentially you're going to get there in the end, as opposed to the suicide charges of a 1 to 4, where you're really blowing against the wind, sort of like try and achieve anything. I mean, it's sort of, what we've got in there is 12. So that's never going to be enough, but now we have achieved something, and that's the let's see whether we can push something here. One to 1 exchange. So, and they haven't managed to recover. I think Mujahideen should start considering recovering, because they're now at depression 4. Depression 5, depression 5, depression 4, depression 4. What are these depressions like? Depression 3, 1, 1, 0. Well, that's their artillery. 1. And they got their depression there. I think the Mujahideen have been a bit excitable, really, and this could be another. This could work. 5 to 1. Defender retreats. Right. It's sort of semi-historic, because the Afghans have managed to sort of push back some of these elements. The Mujahideen have not taken Jalalabad. It wouldn't really. I'm not sure whether they could sort of sit there and hold Eastern Jalalabad for sort of the next 5 years and call it their capital. I don't think it really works like that. Okay. But I'm definitely not going to advance into that. And this is where I was possibly a bit impetuous, and because I'm trying to talk, and talking is actually quite tiring, actually. I think I've been doing it for more than a combined hour now. I've completely forgotten one very, very important thing, which might not be as bad as it sounds. It's got a movement. Let's just see whether it actually lets me move into there. Yes, so I saved myself there, because otherwise I would have left that open. Not enter and reload. That would have been a mistake. Okay, so I need to defend that hex against this unit here, obviously. But that weakens up this stack slightly, but these new units are now so, well, basically I can't even think of the words. I'm going to end their turn. It's coming up to another 15 minutes, unbelievably. So I'm going to give it a rest there. But I think the next few turns the Mujahideen are going to be just resting, and I might actually just assume that I'm going to rest and just flick through 3 turns and instantly without any narration. See you in a bit. Okay. I'm still trying to do multiple things at the same time, but I am enjoying this. I think there's a tremendous sort of, I mean, I would like to say ebb and flow, but there's no ebb and flow. There's no movement at all, really. I mean, we're just trying to attack the city walls. We have taken that, but there's sort of ebb and flow of assaults either way. I don't want to sort of spend too much time looking at the depressions, but I think these units are pretty knackered, and so I think the Mujahideen are strategically going to relax this turn. Oh, some artillery, I guess. No, it's the Afghan turn, isn't it? Okay. And the Afghans have pretty much moved everything they can. Yes, that's right. So now end turn, on turn 12. So it's the Mujahideen turn, and I think we're going to see what we can achieve here. But I think basically most of the army is going to have to regroup. Depression 0 to Depression 6, so he's not going to take part in anything. So these two units are going to fire. Nothing. Attacker eliminated. Okay, so that's it for them. I mean, unless there's anything in here that's... See, he's Depression 6. He's Depression 7. I mean, these units are actually pretty knackered. I mean, they're not really coming back. But I'm gonna regroup for... What does that look called? Let's see. Okay. Okay. So that's the Afghanistan turn again. I don't seem to have any aeroplanes. I wonder why that is. Or Depression 0, Depression 3. So again, I think they want to be regrouping themselves, but not as long as the Mujahideen. Well, they're going to just regroup another turn. I'm not even going to bother firing their artillery. At least they've managed to now dig in where they are. Afghanistan. I think I actually want to continue. I think that's what I missed. I knew I wanted to sort of keep doing something, and that is oh no! I'm leaving Mujahideen. No wonder nothing is working. I've depopulated that hex now. Not good. I'll not be able to capitalise on that. That sucks so much. Oh well, I'm going to move them back. At least something. I have no idea what was in there now. Okay. 1. 2, I reckon that was about it. And the rest, because it's been at least 2 turns, I'm going to move back into there. I think we're going to go for a desperate assault into here. I'm thinking at the moment, I'm just doing, so back into stupid mode. 1-to-1. Now that is essentially what we've been after for a while. Some good luck, some good fortune on those 1-to-1s. I mean, the 1-to-1s, you know, they can go out both ways. But so it is sort of a strange sort of attrition war. but at the same time, I mean, they haven't eliminated those units. They did eliminate one, but that was basically on the Afghanistan stupidity trying to get a flank. None of these units can actually advance. Their movement is 0. But we do have some movement units that can move, so I was wondering whether it can move all these, but I can move everything, because there's no point in being there. Oh, he can move, but he can't get there, because there's no road. He has one movement point. He can't get there. Oh, that is... there's just nothing. You know, I can't move this unit out along this road and then down here, can't do that. Can't move any of these units in there. Look at that. That's got to be one for the history books. Oh, yeah, that's got to be one for the history books. Because obviously the Afghanistans will just walk back in. That's unbelievable. My face is hurting from smiling. Oh god. Let me get another 1-to-1 over here. Oh, an exchange. Oh well. This is an exceptional little game. I just love it when something so small and compact can actually be so involved. I keep saying this, but you know, it just always, that's what games, these types of games are about. It is really the sort of, a lot of people don't like it because it's just sort of number crunching, but it's more than number crunching in a certain sense, because I'm not looking for the numbers. I'm just sort of, you know, I think the thing is that it's sort of, I don't want to say it works realistically, I don't want to say that, but it's, you know, it's effective gameplay. You know, I've managed to sort of be trying to move these things. The maths is sort of working, and we have essentially, when we look at it to interpret, well, they're, you know, well, they're at depression 0, depression 0, depression 4. So with one of these units is actually pretty knackered. Here we've got depression 5, depression 5, 4, 0, 0, no movement. Yeah, so a lot of these troops are actually significantly damaged. I mean, so we've got one in good order, and this one 50. These are 50% strength. I mean, they're only half strength. In here we've got 70% strength, 80% strength. He's full strength. So they're not completely knackered, but there's still a lot of 3, 70%, 90%, 90%. You know, that there are actually, the signs of war are there. Well, there's nothing that Mujahideen can do. They tried to assault here and failed. He should be on depression 1 now. I mean, it would have been nice if he got that, but still, it probably couldn't have advanced. So it's always worth maybe holding something in advance that can do the, you know, actually advance. Oh well. So Afghanistan, depression 2. So we can maybe leave him there. Depression 0. So he's the guy to move. Tragedy narrowly averted. They can't believe their luck. I'm not sure how that happened. I mean, I know how it happened, but I mean, if you think about it, what could possibly have happened? Well, perhaps the Mujahideen did an assault, they got pretty much to the walls, or they took over the positions, but they suffered such that they actually then retreated without fully realizing that they'd caused a rout or an enemy retreat, and so they just left without realizing that the Afghans had left as well. And the Afghan people have said, "Oh look, there's nothing over there. There's no Mujahideen. They've run away. So let's go back." And that's probably what happened. Exactly what happened. But they've not got any air power, so I'm wondering whether or not they lost some aircraft and I just didn't notice. No air power. It also happens at turn 2021, so whether we get that other one back, but it could be that the air power was shot down. It could be, and I didn't notice. Right. They're both in good order. They're both in good order. 10 versus 6. Let's try it. Yeah, we've got artillery, so this should be a 2-to-1. A 3-to-1. Oh, look at that. Defender eliminated. Die roll of 1. Now that is basically, you sit there doing a lot of these actions and really you're hoping for that one action that's going to make a massive difference, that unexpected victory, unexpected defeat. That was sort of, should I do it, should I not? I knew it was going to be about a 2-to-1. The artillery pushed it up obviously to a 3-to-1 with the surrounds. That, has going to significantly change the game, because now I no longer have to defend this hex, at least in the sense that this is now vacant. He could very possibly continue to slide around, weakening his line, weakening his ability to actually do this sort of like these combined assaults. Yeah, that's incredible. It's definitely very interesting when things start to sort of the ebb and flow. I've seen it so many times in these games, and that's what makes them, I think. And it's just sort of such intricate sort of understanding of what all these little counters mean. I think most people just see there as just little boxes, and I get, I do find sort of sound completely narcissistic or anything, but I do just enjoy all this, and just sort of the only analogy I can think of is the pleasure you get from what I call differential equations and integral calculus. I used to love doing that. I can't do it anymore. Sometimes I sit there and think I'm going to do something now, even the most basic ones, because there's no imperative to do it. When I used to do it at school, university, you had to do it because you were learning it, and it was fun. I used to enjoy doing it. I didn't do so well at university, unfortunately, but I did well enough. But I didn't when I was I don't want to tell you my personal history, but I mean, when I was at school, I used to do it. It was just so exciting. And I think I just I got distracted at university, and it was never as exciting. But I knew I wanted to do it, and it's the same thing. It's this sort of solving problems, but I think it's a little more satisfying than Sudoku, which I hate. And I always compare bland mental challenges to, that's what we used to have differential calculus, integral calculus in newspapers. Solve this problem with respect to X. These days the most challenging is Sudoku. So I'll see you in a bit. Cheerio. Okay. I've been playing this for a while now, and it's still quite exciting for me. So what I'm going to do is mouse works. is I'm going to state that the Mujahideen are going to basically have one more go. We know that they basically wandered off. You know, they did actually just wander off. And, I think they can sort of say, well, we're not winning here, but we're going to try one more thing, one more strategy. I haven't been thinking about it, I just thought about it when I sort of did this. Let's end the Afghan turn. My strategy is going to be, because I think they can get that surround there. I should have done this earlier on. It's little things like that you sort of think, hang on, once I've played it a few times, I'll probably new batteries, change my batteries. Once you sort of played it a few times, you think, oh, hang on, that's a sort of legitimate strategy to get those two hexes as a surround for anything on that, which I've been missing. I don't know what to say. But what I'm going to do, I'll take that. And that. And that. Come on. It's just reloading. So now these I'm going to do that. So that splits all this up against that, all this up against that. This is their last hope, because after this I'm going to have to call it quits, because I don't think you can make a video that's more than 2 hours in YouTube. And I think this is what this is going to be. One to one. That wasn't so far off either. I think if it had been lower, it would have been a DR. And I'm forgetting completely. I need something. Movement. 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay. So I'm going to leave one of these units. I don't know why I'm considering the advance. I don't think I'm going to get it. I really don't. 1 to 2 and exchange with a dice roll of 2. So they did well on that. They're getting desperate. They did have that extra surround. Depression 1. I mean, the Afghans are just winning. Okay, so It's now the Afghanistan turn. And again, we've got the option with artillery to do some damage on these two units. 4-1 and an exchange. So Mujahideen are still hanging in there. There's not much more that can be done moving troops around. However, I think I can move one unit there. Weakens this stack, but now he's only got 2 onto it. That makes that stack suddenly not very attractive. End the turn. Well, not really a lot of point, but we've now got the extras around, so an extra 10%. The odds are now doubled. The odds are now bad. He's at Depression 2. Interesting, because he took part in that battle, which gave him upped his depressions. This is approaching level stupid now. I'm not so fussed, but you know, some of these units are, you know, I really need to sort of just sit back and recover them. I don't want to. So I'll finish this video off now. Attack and retreat. Well, on the subject of finishing it off, I think I'm going to do one assault here, and I know it's going to be bad. In fact, I'm going to go back to I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to end that turn. Well, I think I can afford to move there. Now, do I attack this stack, or this, or both? What we've got here, we've got 2 Depression 7, Depression 6, artillery on no depressions. I think we've got to attack that. 4-1, defend a retreat. Preserving enough to offer a significant assault on this little rocket unit. 7-1, defender eliminated. And as per the newspaper articles, the Afghan army is looking as though it could be in the position to actually start doing a counterattack. Unbelievable. I really did think that after they lost this little part of Jalalabad, that was it. But this unit, I mean, what have they got in there? Depression 1, Depression 1, Depression 3, Depression 0, 0, 3, 4. They're not too bad, but I don't think I can attack that hex. But if I can eliminate everything else, what we've got here, a lot, but Depression 1, 3, 0, 1. It's not over for the Mujahideen, but have we got any more artillery? No. Okay, end that turn. but they're all going to have to sit there and recover. I'm going to have one attack here. And the reason I paused it last time because I wanted to get everything in place. Notice that they can't engage because they're on the wrong side of the river. I mean, this is not going to be anything other than maybe a 1 to 3, 1 to 2, and an exchange. So they're actually doing quite well. They're sort of holding their own, but they're taking a pounding doing it, and they're not really. I mean, just all that for one depression there, depression 2, depression 1. You know, these people. I mean, depression 9. I mean, that's basically, you know, non-existent. So Afghanistan units. I'm almost tempted to come out and attack. I mean, what have we got there? No, depression 2, 7, 2, 8. So it's like there's only one unit there. Let's try it. I'm always a big one for counter strikes, usually to my peril. Two to 1, defend a retreat. With a good die roll. You know, these units are sort of knackered. I'm outside, but I really don't think he can do much about that now. Depression 7, depression 2. So we can very possibly at least try and push in that direction. Well, we've got another one we can push with. It's on depression 7. So I'll probably leave him there. Do I want to do another attack here on a 1 to 2? Probably not. But it's not going to get any better. I've got that sort of, I have to do something blues. I have to do something, but you know, it's pretty much the end of the game. It's, yeah, I mean, I just feel as though I would be more tempted to just sort of leave it as it stands. Depression 4, because this is really going to, you know, yeah, see, yeah. Okay, well, maybe I did that on purpose so that I could then essentially. Oh, look, we've got some more aircraft. So I must have lost aircraft. I just didn't notice. Well, let's. Yeah, but I can't use him. I'm going to have to wait for another turn. This is surreal. I wonder if I can put this many videos together. Look at that. I mean, as a picture, that's impressing me. I knew I shouldn't have done this attack over here, but, you know. See you in a bit. Okay, I'm back. So, I think it's a fantastic game. It pretty much has gone according to history. The Afghan forces are now tentatively in a position to counter-strike and start advancing on a relatively exhausted Mujahideen. They've still got some fairly good units. I did do what I consider to be a fairly desperate attack against this hex, and I don't think that it was that unprecedented or that unwarranted, in the sense that they are and should be behaving desperately to take Jalalabad, but they failed, and that was actually a major mistake. They maybe shouldn't have committed so much from here. I'm sort of glad they did, because I do want to sort of round it up. But as you can see, I mean, most of the forces are now outside of Jalalabad, and I'm actually even thinking, can I now attack this unit? Let me have a look. The air power is now back, but what to do? I think it's quite obvious that I have to take this hex back here, but even as they stand, they are at least, each one unit is worth 6 points, so that's 12. So what's that, a 1-to-1, possibly pushing a 2-to-1, so it's not a given that I'm going to win. But 2-to-1 and a die rolls of 2, so that was pretty much exactly as it should be. And oh look, there's a road, which means I can advance. Over here, I think that I'm going to do two things. Firstly, reinforce this and then attack here. Fortunately, I have a lot of, I didn't realise I had that unit. I've got some artillery, so I think this is going to go well. Oh look, 4-to-1 DE, defender eliminated. Die roll of 3. Nice die roll. Back to game, please. So basically, I mean, those two sharp manoeuvres there have totally changed the sort of that setup, although it wasn't too hard to imagine that could have happened. But now the Afghan army is certainly back in the driving seat, or back in control of Jalalabad. And I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that they lost that one unit earlier on, they would be in complete good order. And that was, that was actually sort of really a mistake. I mean, reaching out, exposing that unit for the sake of a 10% flank bonus was something I would think twice about doing if I could realise I was in that situation again. I did mess up here. But they just lost another few units there. Expression 4, 6, 3, 4, and to be quite honest, I'm actually knackered. I'm going to take this opportunity to retreat. I've committed these units and these units to take that, so there's no other movement opportunity. I'm not going to bother there, so I'll end that turn. The air power can't fire because it's stupid. It's just appeared on turn 20, so it can't fire until the next turn. Mujahideen are now essentially going to retreat. Call that there. No, I didn't want to do that. Well, I suppose we can describe that as a rearguard action. The Afghanistan army is not going to follow that, but I will attack with the aircraft. Yeah, that's because I didn't bother explaining. I understand now. 1-to-1 exchange. What are the odds here? Depression 5. Depression 8. Oh. 5-to-1, defender eliminated. Well, certainly not going to push any further on that. Mujahideen beating a retreat. Might be worth putting a forward in there because they were completely useless. They couldn't do anything. I think that this battle could have gone both ways. Even not so much at this stage, but after reflection, well, I don't know what I'm saying. Well, I think what I'm trying to say is, even if I make the changes that I thought I was going to make, or I suggested that I made, I think it's quite an interesting and balanced scenario in game that could have gone both ways, just really depending on those 2-to-1 type attacks. And I quite like the 2-to-1 attacks. I think mainly partly because they're actually quite reasonable to make, but I think what I'm trying to get to is not so much if you do them properly, but if you play, say for example, according to doctrine, maybe, that's how I would think about it. I'm not saying you can do that in a military sense, but you're using sort of a strategy. You would have units in reserve. So you would go in, what I'm saying maybe, and you would do some assaults. If they failed, obviously you could be an exchange. You could retreat, but you become depressed. But then I think the way I'd like to play something like that, you then fall back, and I didn't do that in this case. There's just not enough units, and then you have fresh units come in and try that 1-to-1 attack again, and then this unit would then recover. And then you swap them around, so you'd have this sort of constant swapping around. And I think, I'm not saying that that's how military units actually work, because I'm not really that clear. But I do know that they do recycle. They do, and there is a sort of frontline churn of active units. And after a while, that 1-to-1 is a fair strategy to play. You're not going to win it maybe the first time every time, but I think the Mujahideen could have expected better luck. Yes, somewhere along the lines there, but it's actually gone to some extent according to the historical course of events. and I think it's given a fairly reasonable insight into the geography of Jalalabad, the forces involved, and as a historic representation. So I hope you enjoyed that video. It's a long one. I do so much enjoy these little tiny games because they're so much easier to play, and this video stands testament for the fact that it's probably getting on for a 2-hour long game, with such a sort of simple setup of just a few little hexes, and reading into anything so small and detailed. Well, I don't know what I'm saying there. What I'm trying to say to you, you can read so much into so little. That's really sort of part and parcel of the strength of these little games. Not so much little games, but games in sort of general, where little hexes become quite apparent. I mean, I think this hex here is actually probably central to the whole strategy, because you can get so much around it. I think if I was to do this again, I would certainly at least bear in mind that I can get these flanks, these units up the north could actually then serve a purpose, getting a 20% bonus for almost nothing with no risk, putting units here. But getting this one first is, I think, is central. I think I sort of spread myself out quite a way. What I want to avoid, and what I would hope to avoid if I played it again, would be stacking everything up in one hex, because I think that's bad play. But targeting one hex is not. So instead of maybe forming a line along there, maybe just swinging it all around here and taking one hex at a time. But yeah, so benefits of hindsight are incredible. Well, not incredible, but it's hindsight, isn't it? You think differently the second time you play something. But I think the Mujahideen could win this. So anyway, I'm going to wrap that game up and put these videos together. No one ever watches my videos anyway, but sod's law, someone looks at them before they've been put together, and then I put them onto private, and that's it. So remember, if you want to play this game, if you think, God, that bloke's an idiot, I can totally take Jalalabad with half the Mujahideen that he had. So then you can sign up and you can play it yourself, but you don't have to just play it yourself once. You can play this 100 times. There's no limit to the number of times you can play it, and you can impress all your friends with your excellent military insight into the Siege of Jalalabad. You'll even know what year it was, 1989, and people will think you're a genius. You know all these things, and the secret will be that you signed up and you got involved with interactive history, and it's like a party trick, really. People just think you're clever, so you just sign up and see if you can do better. Speak to you later. Cheers. Bye.